There we
Oh,
go.
there we go. All right.
Yeah, I can hear you. There it is.
Good.
Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, this is cool. I'm excited to talk. I knew it was going to take me like at least a minute or two to figure out what I'm doing with this because technologically speaking, sometimes I'm a little challenged, or I can be.
That's all right. So, Maria, the first question is, how do you say your last name and how do you spell your last name?
Um, you say it like Smulczeski,
Smulczeski.
and you spell it Smulczki. It's Polish.
So Smulczki.
Eski.
Esces.
C wait,
Wow.
Czeski. One day we'll get it right. See, this is why I don't give my last name out, because it's this complicated thing, and people are like, "What?" I'd rather just give myself a moniker and call me that.
That's fine. And I'm going to spell it one more time because I just may have found out I'm dyslexic, but let's find out. So Smulczeski.
That's it.
And I put the Z backwards. I'm definitely. Holy shit. So Smulczeski.
Yeah.
I like that. I used to work with a lot of Polish guys in construction, and they spoke in front of me like all day, every day, and I pretty much only picked up two things, day drinking and curses.
I definitely curse a lot, but I'm not so much of a drinker. I can't say I identify with that part.
Yeah, they were monsters. They were a great guy. I loved them, but they were monsters in that aspect. I went to their wedding and it was like, I think I was like 20, so I was like in college. I was like, I could drink, and then 90-year-old ladies were drinking vodka. I was like, no, I can't do that much. But yeah, they used to teach me curses, and I would just say them.
Yeah.
And in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, if you start walking around drunk cursing, people won't understand what you're saying. You might get into an altercation. So just.
That's true.
Yeah. So
yeah, there's definitely areas of like Polish people where if you say that stuff, they're gonna be like, "No, what's going on now?"
Well, they'll just start cursing me out, like those like spiedale skuda. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry,
Right.
I messed up, my bad. But yeah, that's so Smulczeski is how you pronounce it, and I will double check the spelling because what I basically have been doing is, I'm gonna put your name when I edit this and everything, and also if that's okay with you, your IG handle, so like people could find you and if they want to, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
Cool beans. So, did you watch the whole last video? It's like 3 hours long. I know it's kind of long, but.
So I was like, I had it playing while I was like cleaning and driving and stuff. So I was like paying attention to when I could, and then I'd hear something. I'm like, oh yeah, I identify with that. But I didn't like sit and watch the whole 3 hours because I just have too much to do. But there were a lot of things that like, I was just like listening to you guys talk, and I'm like, I want to get in here and also talk with you because I feel like
That's awesome. I'm looking for volunteers. It's not easy, and I made a funny. So the first person I spoke to was Kara, because Kara and I did a video back in like April. It feels like 2 years ago, but I never thought I was gonna like do like a series like this because I usually make my own videos. And then I had her do the first one, and then I had my friend Megan, which I posted. I did one with my friend Juliana, which I'm going to post tonight. I'll play that this week, and then I'll edit our video this week, and then next Sunday post up our video. And I have one guy I have in mind. I'm going to ask him if he wants to record. He has depression, and I want to see if he wants to talk about it. I know some people are probably hesitant to just like start speaking about whatever. But I've just obviously the 4 guests so far that have either volunteered or I've asked are women. I don't know. I think, is it a thing? We'll talk about it in the video. Like, are men just like not open to talk about it as much? Is that like wrong for me to say? I don't even know. I'm just, you know, just like trying to like make like, wow, no, I don't see a lot of people I know personally. I mean, millions of people on YouTube recording videos about mental illness, but I don't know. I know friends who have anxiety. I know people who are going through, especially now, going through shit. And I don't know. It's weird to reach out. It's like, hey, I know you're fucked up. You want to talk about it? So it's kind of tough. So usually,
yeah, it depends on the friendship, right? Like, do you just like kind of talk about that stuff all the time, or are you just bringing it up like, hey, do you want to talk about your depression? All of a sudden, I feel like I wouldn't maybe do that.
that's true. That might be that's probably it. I can't do that. Well, I do. That's really another catalyst for this. I've been making these videos for years. I kind of slowed down over time as I felt better and more calm. I made less videos, less updates, because you can only talk, you know, if I'm feeling okay, it's kind of boring to like, okay, still fine. You know, it's like, that's how I felt. But I realize now there's probably a lot I can talk about, because a lot of, even like in my calmer days now, etc., there's things that I do that just seem normal and fine to me, but I know that are, you know, not neurotypical things. Like they're things that I'm used to and I'm fine with, and they seem fun and to me. And it's until you're around other people and you start talking about that, and you're like, that doesn't sound good. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think like most of my childhood life, I was kind of isolated in a way, and then a lot of weirdnesses that I discovered about myself were like when I started socializing a little bit more, and then seeing how not really like comparing myself in terms of like I'm trying to be like other people, but just noting like the differences between things that I think are normal and things that other people think are normal was, I think, the beginning of like my very introspective like mental analysis, which is something like just something I do in my life. Like I started doing that when I was very young, just noticing these differences. And there's apparently there's a lot of things about me that would be considered weird, but I feel like everybody has these little idiosyncrasies, and like if you feel like you don't, and you feel like you're more a part of like everyone else, and you don't think there's anything special about you, I think that's not really real. Like there's something, like you're not really delving into who you really are, because we all have these like we all have these weird things about us that it can't be avoided. We have everybody's so unique in these ways, or we should be, at least, if we're actually like in touch with our real deep selves.
I agree. So I don't want to say something as cheesy as everyone is special, but I understand what you mean.
I think I literally said that.
Yeah, well, a little bit, but I get it. I understand. I think here's my opinion on it is, so the phrase that I became aware of not that long ago is neurodivergent. There's neurodivergent, neurotypical, and a lot of people are either one or the other, or maybe in between, or however you want to look at it. But so maybe people like us with maybe anxiety or depression or anything, like you said, where you said you were young and you're being introspective. A lot of people aren't, and I wasn't very introspective young, but I think at some point, if you have some kind of mental illness or you're, you know, not neurotypical, you're almost forced to get introspective, because you aren't, you know, like me personally, at a certain point, you know, I knew from young that I definitely was anxious or neurotic or whatever the word you would use, but it wasn't until like really like college, early 20s, where the mood swings became like you almost like take a step back and like, why am I like this? And I think the first reaction was like just depression. Like I didn't know what was going on. My brain chemicals were all over the place, whether it was from, you know, alcohol or sadness, self-inflicted kind of overthinking. And then in my later 20s, I was sort of like, again, I feel like I don't know if it's the right word, but forced to be like, all right, let me try to figure out, like, take note of why do I feel like this now and why do I feel like this then, and what's causing it. And I've been in therapy for 4.5 years, and I'm 37, so it wasn't until like my early 30s I even thought to go talk to someone. And it was only because I was so overstimulated to the point where, in my particular case with anxiety, I could have a panic attack any day over anything because I was living at like the highest peak levels of brain chemicals, whatever you want to call it. And I had forced myself to, take, take note, like, how is my breathing? Like, go like real deep to like to the point of like almost to like a molecular level. Like, what food, what time of day, what people am I around? What chemicals or stimulation of any kind is affecting me in what way and another? And now I'm to a point where I'm still, changing, but I'm way more in tune to the, like, if I drink a lot of coffee, or if I sit in front of Netflix for 5 hours and watch something violent, or go on the internet and go down some rabbit hole, there's almost like a price. Like, a price will be paid because I don't know if it's an empathetic kind of thing or what it may be, but like I get like wrapped up emotionally into things and people and places and stuff like that. So, I mean, how young were you when you were like getting introspective? Like,
Oh, see, this is kind of hard to talk about because there's actually a lot of my childhood that I don't remember, and what I will say has to do with that. I actually think that the trauma of my childhood caused me to be introspective, um, in a way that like maybe I wouldn't have been once I did confront those other people in society. I think that like traumatic experiences sort of like made me into something very thoughtful. I don't know, like the suffering changed me. Um, so I don't remember I don't remember when I started becoming thoughtful, but I just know like my earliest memories are like me considering my own like states, which at the time I didn't know these were like consciousness states. I didn't know what consciousness was.
mm-hmm.
I can remember when it dawned on me that consciousness was a thing, but that was like many years. I was probably in my 20s when that happened. But I was thinking of things like my conscious states and like how I would react to things, like very similar to what you were just saying, like noting how something would make me feel and like sort of like piecing that out and like kind of wondering about why I would react to like certain things in certain ways and like pinpointing certain triggers of things. I was kind of doing that when I was very young because I was so isolated and like, I wouldn't say bored, but I was isolated from a lot of other things. Like I wasn't allowed to watch cartoons and things like that. So because a lot of the time I had to entertain myself and I read a lot of books and stuff. I was kind of, I partly conditioned to be very cerebral because I needed to entertain myself. And then, I mean, I think it's partially me, just how I'm made, I guess, that I would go that route. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Nature, there's the nature versus nurture. Some of it's genes and some of it's environment. And when I first started going to therapy, I had like a, I had like a, I don't know what the right word is. Like, I was determined to figure out the exact day, time, age that I started becoming an anxious person, because I knew it was young. And after, like, without exaggeration, maybe 5 or 6 months of every week or twice a month, um, trying to, like, well, I remember, like, when I started doing therapy, I was like really just like, it was almost like waking hypnosis. I was like, okay, so was thinking about when I was 10 and this happened, because I don't have like a traumatic background per se. Like I had nothing that I would, I have good parents. They're still good people. I live with my family. I didn't have any kind of abuse or anything like that. But I think some things can be traumatic in like perspective, um, feeling a certain way, not being able to like vocalize how I feel or who I am or what I am. I'm 7 years old, but knowing, like, I always think back, like when I was 7, I obviously was not the same person I am today, but in that 7-year-old brain, like I knew who I was a person. I knew what I wanted and what I didn't want. And I was fully aware of like everything up as far as my education and experience could give me. But I definitely still had this like inquisitive brain that I have. And things happen that I think either, I don't know what the right word is, discouraged me or made me put myself inside of like a shell. Over time, I kept like layering up things outside of myself to the point where I was, again, in my early 20s or mid 20s, and I kind of had the realization of like, I don't know who the fuck I am. Like I know what I am, and I'm my personality is real, but like who was I before I started doing all this defensive stuff? And I don't remember, and
Yeah.
so I couldn't get past like the mask. Is it a mask? Am I this person, or is this person the armor that I built? And I forgot like who I really was when I was 7, 8, 9, 12, whatever. And eventually my therapist was like, look, you're never ever going to figure out that moment. And if you ask your parents, which I had weird conversations with them a lot of times, one, they don't remember, because my parents were young. They were like 20 when they had me. So when I was like 7 or 8, they were like 27, 28, 29. So they're just like dealing with children. They might say something that to them is a passing, just shut up, go to bed. But to me, I'm like, oh my God, like what did I do? And like you keep it like this nougat center of yourself for 30 years, but that was like a Thursday for them. They have no idea. So it's hard to like reverse engineer your life, and because 50% of what I'm remembering might not even really have happened, or it's tainted in some way. So I gave up on that, and now it's like case by case, day by day, just like, why do I do this? Why do I feel like this? Why am I this way? And it makes me, over time, I've become like a quieter person. The mind is always, something is going on. As I like to put it, and I've said it in other videos, when I am in a higher state of whatever, anxiety or just overthinking and brain's going a million miles an hour, I'll take things that are fine, they're not broken, and I'll just keep fixing them until they're actually broken, and just made things worse. And so that's how I do. And now, before we did this interview, so I know I talk a lot about anxiety. It's mostly like my mental health, my mental illness. You said you had anxiety issues. Obviously, you just mentioned trauma, and I don't want to, again, this is not like an interview where I'm like, tell me more about when you were 9. It's not that. I just want to have a conversation. I'm not going to make you talk about anything you don't want to talk about. But you did talk about, anxiety, depression, which I think is pretty common. I mean, anyone who didn't have it as of February of last year probably has it now. And so welcome to the show. And
Yeah.
I just feel like you were talking about the possibility of like schizophrenia. I mean, you want to talk about that, or does it matter? Like because I was interested. I was like, oh, like that sounds like scary, but also like, ooh, I want to hear all about that.
Well, it sort of unfolded into that. I feel like I definitely do want to talk about that because I think it's interesting, and I'm not embarrassed at all. I'm just wondering about it because I just see certain things, if when I talk about it, you can tell me what you think too, or anybody else who sees it can give me some perspective. I'm not afraid to hear back about it. But yeah, I see, and not just see, but like like visualize things, even just mentally, in all of the senses, very vibrantly, in ways that I think most people are like, are you tripping? Right? Are you on something? And like, we're probably going to get into a conversation about psychedelics,
That's
because
fine.
I find that cool. All right, because I feel like you can talk about elements of experience in terms of like psychedelic understanding, like psychedelically seeing the world,
Hmm.
which I don't necessarily think that you have to be on drugs in order to be able to do. But drugs, sort of like psychedelic drugs, they bring out these very specific things that like I would say, you should pay attention to in like a psychedelic perception, and you can bring these out without drugs. But I almost like don't know where to start with this, because like maybe I should say,
Well, I'm following. Do you like McKenna, like Terrence McKenna? Do you ever like watch any of his stuff or listen to anything he ever had to say about like psychedelics?
yeah,
Yeah, so he
yeah,
would, he would admit he wasn't about the ashram or the yogi, and he didn't give a fuck. The guy took DMT 3 times a year, so he like would just go right to the source, and he would say, yeah, there's definitely ways you can probably bring about a psychedelic, spiritual, fourth, 10th dimensional thing, but 3 big hits from DMT and it just works a lot faster and better. So I understand what
yes,
you're saying. Like it's like you could just take 40 years to do it, or sit on the floor in the kitchen and let it happen before dinner if you want.
yeah. Um, yeah, this can come down to like what are you comfortable doing?
Hmm.
And like if you've been there, like that these things are equivalent. I feel like the psychedelic experience, in whatever way that you can access it, is like a rite of passage. It should be like something that we experience in this life. Like we should be able to see more deeply like that, and not just walk around and like take things for granted. Like, don't get me wrong, it's terrifying. So I see why, maybe some people wouldn't want to do it, or not able to do it right now, or, maybe not in this life. But I think it's fundamentally important to get there at some point.
Yeah, and I just saw something. I didn't read the article, but I saw something along the lines of like more people did mushrooms in 2020 reportedly than prior because of who knows again, I didn't read the article. I don't want to misquote or anything, but yeah, I agree with you in that sense where I am scared. I did it one time. I did mushrooms one time, and I'll let you talk about your experiences. But yeah, I loved it. And then the next day I was like, that was a lot. And being more aware of my anxiety levels, that's where I hit the brakes. Like, I don't want to eat this stuff. And it's like, you can't just puke it up. You can't just go like, all right, stop. You
Oh,
got to
you're in it.
You got to go.
No, you're in.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes being forced to just, I think in a lot of ways we end up doing things in like escapism, because we're uncomfortable, and like sometimes we can confront things, but most of the time we're like, well, that makes me uncomfortable, so I'm going to do something to relieve that discomfort, and just find a way to calm.
Exactly.
Calmness is also vitally important. So it's like this home base that we need to be able to get back to, but that's not a place to stay. That's not a place where like things happen. So it's like it's like home base where we need to establish a known place of safety, and we need to be able to find the pathways back to the safe space. But I also think it's very important to venture out of that safe space,
Mm-hmm.
and go and experience something, maybe have enough intuition to know when we're at the threshold of like, oh, this is too overwhelming. But overwhelm ourselves just enough and then come back to the safe space. Because also in the safe calm space is when you can contemplate what just happened in the other space. Because a lot of times when you're in these other spaces, you're just like, whoa, a lot of shit is happening, and you can't actually like, you can't process them in that moment. And it's only when you come back to the place of calm where you can like kind of sort them out and integrate them and stuff. So there's like the process of like going into the experience and then actually having the experience and then coming back and reflecting upon that experience. There's like different important stages that need to happen in order for something meaningful to come out of it, instead of just like complete chaos, which is not what I look for. Like whenever I take a substance or whenever I intentionally change my consciousness, I'm doing so because I'm studying the states. I want to know, like I'm following the mental process, and I'm taking note of all of the weird like flora or fauna that I see, and like shapes and stuff, and like ideas that I might have, and like trying to pay very close attention to what my mind is doing at every moment. And then like I want to take as much of like try and remember as much as possible, and then take it back with me, and then be like, wow, how can I sort this out? Because maybe all of these things in themselves are, they might be abstract, but there's something behind them. Sort of like dream interpretation. It's very similar. Going into conscious states is like different dream states almost. And so I'm not looking to like get high or fucked up and like just escape my reality. You know, I'm actually doing the opposite when I go into these spaces. Like I would like, my intention is to probe reality, and I'm a inextricable part of the reality that I'm perceiving. So to watch my mental states is very important. So everything is like, there's a balance between being very careful and letting things flow. But I think that comes with practice. And I think one of the things that Terence McKenna said was like, people who do studies like this, like they study themselves with substances and stuff. He called them oneironauts, which is like the dream surfers or something, right? And I really like that word, because it's such a strange word that like nobody knows what it is. But I like that there's a word for doing that. And I would call myself one. And so I have a word to say when I try and describe this thing that I'm doing. But it definitely took me a lot to get here. Like a few years ago, when I was in like my peak anxiety, I would not have been able to do this, because I wouldn't have been able to handle it. It just would have been chaos. And like, so.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, well, that's what happened to me. I mean, so 2/3 of what McKenna says, a lot of people either love the guy or hate the guy, but I could just listen to, there's like a 10-hour long video on YouTube, and a few months ago I just let it play like every day. I was listening to a little bit of it, and I listened to that guy just say his vocabulary was intimidating. So yeah, it's interesting. But no, I agree. So I did it once. I am too scared to do it right now. I think I'm in a calmish, more controlled, like even like if I get anxiety right this minute, I could be having a full blown, like my heart could start beating, but I'll be fine because I know what it is. I know the monster, and it's fine. But I have the same thing. I've done altered states, and sometimes it's accidental, and sometimes it's completely like I didn't work from March till about November. So I was off for all these months because of the pandemic. And kind of like the first 3 months, like in a state of high anxiety, but fine. And then I would do things like when I sleep, if I'm sleepless for a period of time, I can, and I've been doing this for years, when I close my eyes, I can sort of like make the colors, the gray, black behind my eyeballs, do what I want them to do. Mostly it's like a bluish, pinkish purple. But if I'm really, really tired, like 36 hours of no sleep, I can get into the reds and the yellows. And I know that sounds crazy, but like about
No.
before I
Trust
took
me.
my trip, my bus trip I took back in the end of August, there was one day I just didn't sleep. I thought I was gonna pass out that night, didn't sleep. The next day I figured I'd pass out in the afternoon and didn't sleep. So now it's like, again, I'm approaching like the 2-day mark of no sleeping. And I listened to YouTube videos of meditation, not just Terrence McKenna, but like there's all sorts of like binaural, solfeggio frequencies and all this kind of stuff. And there was one, it was a heart chakra meditation from Joe Dispenza. It's 30 minutes and it's binaural. It's him talking in between. And I was laying in a chair and was not only, I was sitting back, it was in this chair actually, and I moved to a more comfortable space. And I was not only seeing purple, reds, and yellows, like the real, like vivid, like my eyes were closed and I'm seeing color. I had the lights off and everything, but I was seeing floral patterns, like as if like ferns were like coming at me and kind of wrapping around my face. And I almost had the reactions like, like jump up and like it's scaring me. But I was like, all right, I could do this, and just sort of like let it keep happening and let it keep happening. And so I relate to that. I could relate to altered states that are on purposeful, but nothing, no substances other than some alcohol here and there. But I'll let you continue because I'm interested in hearing like your. I want to hear more about this controlled. What's the word? The neuro. I want
A
to.
neuronaut?
Neuronaut.
A neuronaut? Yeah. All right. It's like OIR. Hold on. ONIERONAUT. I think that's it.
I could just hear, his voice. He's the most distinctive. I could just hear him say it. It's so nice.
Yeah. There's one thing I wanted to say about, since we're bringing up the pandemic and like people are stuck inside and like that speculative thing that you heard that more people have done mushrooms in 2020 than ever before. Well, I think when you are confined to a space, you start getting into an existential crisis, like it's forced in a way, because you only have so many things to entertain yourself with at home. And if you're very used to escapism and you're used to like going out and partying, and now you can't do all of those things that you were using for escapism, I think the quarantine caused a lot of people to self-reflect, because you're left there sitting with yourself for many
100%.
days at a time.
Yep.
And so I think, and then once you start doing that and you're like, oh, well, maybe I can journey somewhere in my mind. Okay, now you're getting somewhere interesting, more interesting than before at least.
Yep.
And then when you go do that and you're in that state, like you're on the edge, like of that self-reflection, you're going to have a profound trip. And like, you're probably going to maybe say that mushrooms is like, oh, I'm going to, there's something here. There's something important here. So then you might try it in the first place, and then you might be more compelled to do it again because you've seen like something else awoke in your experience by being stuck in quarantine. So, I mean, I'm like one of those people that I hermit a lot. So I do this purposely. So this is not, for anybody else that like regularly hermits because they need self-reflection and like separate space time.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely need this time in order to reflect and stuff. I need this calm space. I need to not go out and party every night. Because I don't want to be in escapism. If I do that, then I'm going to be lost in anxiety. And I think a lot of people are, and maybe they don't realize it. They're just like filling the gaps and trying to distract themselves from the anxiety instead of like following it back to its, like following its traces to its origins. So you said something that I I did this experiment. This whole thing kind of started when at the peak of my anxiety. So like I started noticing that I couldn't even think throughout the day. Like I couldn't think regularly. I couldn't focus on anything. And like that's one of my fears, is like not to be able to think, to lose my mind. So I noticed that I couldn't have like a full thought out thought. Like I don't know. My anxiety was getting the better of me. It was like this gripping thing, and it just had a hold of me. And I'm like, I can't live my entire life like this. That would be crazy. Because I felt like I was no longer a person, because I couldn't feel myself. All I could feel was the anxiousness.
Yeah,
So
you're just in survival.
Yes.
And you can't. What made me, because my anxiety morphed into things. I'm hypochondriac, so the overthinking becomes health anxiety. I think it's almost like a natural state. You overthink to the point where, again, like I said, I will fix things until they break. I mean, if I find a bump on my body, could be an ingrown hair. There was a time where I would either pick at it until it was a hole in myself, like literally a physical, like rip it out of my body, or I couldn't get, I can't get to it. It's like in my thigh or something. And I'm like, well, that's, like, okay, let's go on Google. Okay, here's the cancers it could be. That's what it is. And then go from there and then move from that place. And what really peaked for me was I consider myself a smart person, but I have bad memory. I couldn't remember the difference between like a month ago and 4 years ago. People were like, hey, remember we did that? We went to that concert. I'm like, I know we did, and I kind of have flashes of it, but like I couldn't tell you like enough about it. Like I felt like I was 28 and I had Alzheimer's or something like that, and I was kind of losing it. And yeah, you just can't, because every thought branches out like a lightning bolt to 27 other things. And then, I said it we talked about it in my last video, which with my friend Jules, was it's almost like I feel like neurotypical people, and I know this might be like this is complete opinion. I don't know for sure. They might have like two voices, like their voice and the thing they're arguing with. Like, should I take the job or shouldn't I? Maybe there's a third voice. And I feel like when I was at my peak, there was like 20 voices in there. It was like me, the thing I was going to do or not do, and I'm talking about like deciding to have a sandwich or not. Then there was like a third voice playing devil's advocate, then a fourth and a fifth voice, and it's like almost like the you behind the you behind the you, and like me observing it all, and then like fighting with that guy. Like I made the analogy of like I'm the pilot, but I'm also the passengers, and I'm in the back of the plane going like, what's he doing up there? It's like, motherfucker, it's you. Like you're flying the plane. Like, that kind of thing. So I get it. I totally understand that.
So that's actually the beginning of the talk about the schizophrenia. Because, all right, I feel like, so there's different types of anxiety, and like people types that can get this, but like for people that are deep intellectuals, I feel like it's almost impossible not to develop anxiety and depression, and like go through levels with your thinking where these things become manifest, and then in different myriad ways. You're definitely talking with like 20 or more facets of yourself, because you're trying to wrap your mind around all of the possibilities of like looking at something, and this is like the worst possible usage of a deeply intellectual mind, to like get lost in all of these like, because you want to understand the perceptions, the perspectives, but you're getting lost in things where you know, it's not important. Like, you're thinking that about a sandwich. And like, I would do that at every branch of a decision.
Yeah.
You realize all these possibilities that in possibility space. And then you're just like frozen there. And then you become, well, I'm not even sure the correct way to say this, but like all of these voices branch out, and then you're talking to yourself.
And doing nothing.
It's very right, and doing nothing.
What ends up happening is your friends get married, they have kids, and then you come over, you're 30, you know, I'm 37 now, but like, let's say I was 30, you know, and everyone's like talking about like, so did you hear about the thing? I'm like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I have been just in a state, because you can't say it also. You can't say like, what have you been up to? It's like, well, I've been
talking to myself.
Yeah, talking to my, you know, basically talking like, and when I'm by myself, I don't know if you do this, if you'll admit to it, when I'm by myself, what started me making the videos back in 2017 was I was already having that conversation out loud by myself. So I figured just turn the phone on and just fucking.
So I do this all the time. I drive around a lot for work and stuff, and just for adventures and stuff. I go on road trips and stuff. But I'm there talking to myself. Like I talk to myself all day long. I just entertain myself. Like I gotta talk through some stuff. Like just like that happens all day long.
It helps.
It does help.
It does help.
It does help. It helps to like it helps to talk it out instead of like being completely frozen. I mean, at least if you're having a conversation, you're not completely frozen, right? Because you're like working through some stuff, and you might get some revelations out of that.
100%. Now, before you continue, I want to ask, how many of the conversations, because I know at least a good amount of them are, whatever's happening to you, whatever you're thinking about today, yesterday, tomorrow, what percentage of them are like completely hypothetical, almost like little drama plays that you just sort of like, they're not real. It's not, you're not really going through this. Like I'll wake up in the morning and like a word will be in my brain. Like a couple weeks ago, I woke up with 2 words. I woke up with just 2 words. So all I remember from my dream was zoological and another word, which I don't even think it's a real word. It was cryptozoological, right? So cryptozoological and zoological. Those are the 2 words that are on my brain as soon as I woke up in the morning. It's like, now what am I doing with that information? So I woke up, and in my head, and I'm giving myself, I'm probably telling people a little too much, but whatever. So now I wake up, and I guess the last thing I had in my head before I woke up, the last like vision or image was I was before people. Like it was like almost like a debate or like some like a TED talk, something like in that kind of a setting where I am talking about like cryptozoological things, which I have no information about. I don't know about Bigfoot or whatever or whatever, but now I wake up and I out loud in my room as I'm putting my socks on and stuff, I'm still having the conversation. I'm like, well, you have to understand that, you know, these things are not around anymore. You know, like does that relate to you? Like, what are you? Like, is that...
Oh yeah. I would say most, if not like almost all of them are just these totally imaginary, dramatic things that I have totally in my imagination crafted into like real things. And then I will be having a conversation like out. I wouldn't say it's, I don't know if it's performing, but it's definitely it's it's a dramatic production where I'm acting it out for myself, entertaining myself.
100%. The one I have the most recent, and you can give me an example as well. So when I listen to music, about 50% of the music I love, music I listened to for years, I don't really know a lot of the lyrics. I kind of make up my own lyrics and kind of like whatever the song makes me feel like, that's where my head goes when I hear that song, even though it has nothing to do with whatever that I'm thinking about. And a recent one I had, and I talked about this with my friend Megan on the video we just posted this week, was like I'll wake up and the scenario is we built a ship that can go light speed, but whoever goes isn't coming back. You know, he's not coming back, right? So I volunteer, of course. I'm like, fuck it, I'll do it. Do we need, you know, we need to, and my thing is like, we need to you can't build up to light speed. You kind of have to like almost like the warp drive. You got to hit the button and just be from 0 to light speed. But we figure out a ship that has to kind of circumnavigate the globe about a couple hundred times to pick up the speed, and then boom, you're gone, right? And like I have to like talk to like people about it, and like, will I do it? Can I do it? Can I stand the because I'm gonna get out there and like I'm not gonna die, but I can't come back. So like, can I like be by myself without going crazy enough to send information back before I die or kill myself or starve or whatever? Like, and I'll go through the whole thing. Like, I'll just go through the whole thing. And that's completely not real. Like, Elon Musk and me don't talk. Like, that's not real. Like,
this has to be a thing that happens with creative people, especially.
I
Like
think
we create these poetic realities where other things can exist that couldn't exist here, and then these are the kinds of people who are like the storytellers, and they're the writers, the poets. Like, if you're able to express that, if you're able to visualize that stuff and then you express that stuff, like, that stuff is like, I feel like in a way that the imagination space is a real space also. Like, these things exist in a real way too. I feel like, who is it? It's Alan Moore who talks about these, he talks about like three space, or like imaginal spaces where things exist in like the mental universe that have different realities but are just as real as a physical reality. And like, it's hard to imagine that if you don't do it, I guess. But I don't know, like, it's sort of like taking a kernel of a thought, an idea, and then going down into that rabbit hole, and then you're acting out the whole thing and like making it real. So
yeah.
like, it's real for you.
Yeah, it's not. It's so much more than daydreaming or like it, because a good one will last me sometimes. Because I used to drive for a living too. I'm a technician now, so I work on cars, and I'm in my head even when music's playing. But I used to drive for hours a day, so it would sometimes start when I took my head off the pillow in the morning and go for hours. I would just like stop, talk to people, interact, say what I had to say, get back in the truck, start driving, put music on, or just be in silence and go right back to where I was, like right back to the thing, and take off, like, act 3, scene 15, and go.
I almost feel like it's these pockets in reality where you can go and you can access these things, which, so being a physicist by nature, I sort of like to compare the like mental spiritual things that I experience to like things that I have done mathematically or scientifically.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we know that there are dimensional pockets that we can't access physically. They're either too big in dimension or too small. There's tiny curled up dimensions. We fight about how many there are exactly and where and how they are, but there are more dimensions than are accessible to like the everyday senses. So like the 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time, there are more dimensions than just those, and they could be smaller or bigger, but there are places that can be accessed where your body can't go. But, and they've been doing experiments with these mental spiritual experiences. It's kind of like a phenomenological study, which phenomenology is like, I don't know if everybody reads about this branch of philosophy, but it's like my favorite branch, because it's basically the philosophy of thinking about thinking. So it's like the deepest it's like the deepest branch of philosophy, like the most fundamental of all of them, because it's like, it's exactly what we were doing, which we didn't know that we were doing, a phenomenological study. But we're studying how our brain reacts to every little thing, and every slight change in consciousness or awareness, and every little thing that we experience, like studying that is a phenomenological study, and you can make you can quantify that in ways in the laboratory, and that's a very that's actually a very interesting conversation that starts to get into hyperbolic space, actually, which I realized very recently. Oh yeah, that's hyperbolic space. Like, I don't know why I didn't think of that before. But
explain that. Explain that real quick for those who know what hyperbolic space is. Those people, not me.
So we experience Euclidean space on an everyday level, which is like you have 3 dimensions of space, which seem flat and straight, and you can measure them, and they stay consistent. And you have 1 dimension of time, which you in everyday experience you can measure, and it seems to stay consistent. But you have spaces that are not flat, and the other kinds of spaces that you can have are spherical space, where the curvature is positive, and then you have hyperbolic space, where the curvature is negative. So obviously, if you have a spherical space, everyone knows what a sphere looks like. But hyperbolic space looks like a Pringle, which not everybody knows that, but it's like a saddle, like a its curvature is like negative, which means there's like 2 kinds of curves, like a Pringle.
It's interesting.
So that's actually one of the discussions of like, what is the shape of the universe? Like, we don't actually know what the shape of this universe is. It could be either spherical, flat, or hyperbolic. And depending on the shape, in mathematics, everything that like the shape of a thing determines its function. So every like nuance in the shape or whatever it is determines like a specific kind of function. So in hyperbolic space, it's sort of, I guess there's different kinds of infinity, and this is the most extensive infinity. I'm getting really abstract here, so.
No, it's all right. Now you say when you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, so you say you're physicist by nature. You're actually a physicist, right? Like, am I correct by saying that that's your actual job, like your actual everyday, like?
Yeah. Well, I'm not in the laboratory right now. There's like a few reasons for that. One of them is COVID. But yeah, I was working at Brookhaven National Laboratory on Long Island. And yeah, I had a few physics projects there. And basically what I was getting into right before I left was I was looking at spaces. I was looking at the structure of reality, particularly as it had to do with dark matter.
Cool.
So there's different ways of talking about that. Like either some people think that dark matter is a particle. Some people don't think that calling it dark matter is a misnomer, because first of all, it's not dark, it just doesn't interact with light at all. And second of all, maybe it's not matter, which is kind of what I thought. I thought it was just like, I think what we perceive as the effect of dark matter has to do with the sort of space-time itself. So
yeah, me personally, like, I am not a physicist, very much so. I am but I will go down those rabbit holes. Like, I do get very interested in like what you were saying about like the different perspective realities. I mean, so I don't know all the you know, the nomenclature, whatever you want to call it, but like atoms, like, you know, we always draw the atom with the thing, but really it's like the way they explain it, the way I have, you know, there's the particle, it's never where it is, but when you look, it's there, but then it's gone. So it's like one
Yep.
of those things where like it's a cloud, a mist of electrons or whatever. But if you look over here, there it is, and you look over there, there it is. But it's really not, because by the time, because that like instant you see it, you're seeing like almost like a flash of it, and it's gone. Same thing with like the difference in realities, where certain things will only be there when we look at it, and then when we're not looking, it is not there. How do you prove that? And I watched the experiments with like a cat in a box and all this kind of weird, crazy shit they were doing, and I was like, this is fucking bananas, but I love it because it kind of like theoretical science. I mean, I like it because like, yeah, you can, we're gonna toil over that long after we're alive, but I like that because it kind of explains like a lot of like, especially like what we were just talking about before, about how we're thinking about thinking about thinking about thinking, where a thing about reality, and even like in my brain, is I'm looking at it, and I know that sounds crazy, like abstract, to be abstract, where it's like I'm taking a thought, a feeling, emotion, a color, a memory, whatever, and like I'm looking at it, and like now it's real. I've made it real by like looking at it, and I think doing
Exactly.
that, the talking to myself or toiling over thoughts and stuff like that, I'm manipulating a reality. It's not maybe the physical three-dimensional reality, but it is, something's happening because it affects people physically. I mean, if you're miserable, chemical imbalance or whatever, you're gonna get sick. Like it's gonna affect you. It's a real thing. But how do you make the connection from one to the other? So like I am super interested in all that stuff. It's just, you know, I don't have all the lingo and stuff like that. But it's I think it's great. Like I think that's awesome that you were doing that. And I know it's not exactly in the mental health thing, but I definitely would like to hear like what you were working on, and like now the question I wanted to ask. Wow, I'm like all over the place. The question I wanted to ask is, do you think going into sciences had to do with like who you are as a person, like especially younger, and like the constantly in your head, or whether it's forced in your head, or you know, you know, prefer to be there, and the thinking and the overthinking and the etc. drove you to that, like, you know, that nature nurture thing, where it's like because of how you are and who you are, and now here you are, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a few things I want to say. Like, first of all, I will say that there is for sure a crossover between realities where you can do something in one reality and it will be felt, or there's an effect in the other. So whether you can like flesh out exactly what these other realities are or not, like when you're in them, you can feel the effects between one another, and they do affect each other. And I've also seen that mathematically. Um, the other thing I wanted to say was that one of the most interesting things that I have noticed is that you don't need to be doing physics to see the things that physics describes. Like when you go into these alternative states and you start seeing like structures of reality, especially in these psychedelic states, you're perceiving things that we have derived in physics. And I happen to know that because I have been doing physics and also doing the neuronaut studies. And I know that there's a correlation between these things. So, but you don't have to be a scientist. Like so many people who I have spoken to who like have had the deepest, like most intricate experiences of like aspects of reality they have not been physicists. Like a lot of the physicists are like kind of closed-minded and they're like looking for a particular thing. And people who aren't scientists have these very deep, like understandings of things that they've accessed, where I can say that this is a thing in physics, but like you have a deeper understanding of it because of your poetic interpretation almost. And like I kind of wish that we could have more conversations between the two to like bridge these things, because I think science is very much like, oh, poetry is over there, and then poetry is like, oh, science is too technical, but like there's an overlap there. And I think that overlap is important, especially, you know, if we're trying to combine perspectives or whatever. And then to answer your question, like, did I end up in doing science because of my situation? Yeah, that's absolutely what happened. Because the more I would like be isolated and study, I would become very observant, and then I would study myself because I was left alone with myself a lot. I was just like drawn to science because of these explanations of how things worked, and I was like studying how I worked. And then in particular, the reason why I got into astrophysics was like when I was a little girl, and I would go outside and I would look up at the sky and I see these different points of light, and it's like the sky is like this time capsule, because all of these different points of light are from different times, because they're different like distances away. So you're looking at like this mosaic of light and time, and like it kind of makes you feel it, like it puts you in that altered state of consciousness. Like actually that I can pinpoint, like that is my very first altered state of like thinking about my place in the universe, like my cosmic perspective, like what am I doing here? What is existence? Like what is all of that up in the sky? Like what is space and time even? And what is light? Like, so like I was thinking that very young. And when I would look up at the sky, I would start asking all of these questions, and then these questions just poured into everything. And then it was just, everything was existential. And so in a way it was beautiful, because I've been like contemplating what existence is, and I appreciate things on like this fundamental level, because I'm just like so interested in looking at them. But at the same time, I come back sometimes and I'm like almost constantly in this existential crisis, because even though I'm asking all these questions and I'm fascinated, I don't really have answers. And then I wonder if like you get to this point where you think so much about everything that everything means nothing, and then you're not sure where meaning goes, and then you're assigning meaning to things because you're inextricable from the thing you're perceiving. And then
Yeah, well, what you're describing now is what I have said. Now this is the number 3, is you're fixing it until it is broken. You're taking the thing, it's like, oh, isn't that nice? Now you're like, now what? I have all these pieces, and I put more complexity, and I've made myself. Again, I don't look at it as a negative light either, but I sort of will do that. I will put myself in a position where like I'll take something I like, looking up at the sky, and then get to the point where now I'm just like almost depressed. I'm almost like, I shouldn't have done that. You know, I shouldn't have wondered this long, this much, and put myself into a position where like, not only do I have no answers, I have like 100 more questions, and it's
and depression.
And depression, and I'm sad. Yeah.
And anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And for most of my life, I always thought about, we need to go into space, we need to get out there, let's go out there. And then at a certain age, I was like, we're in space. We're 12 billion, light years from everything else. Like, we're in the middle somewhere. This whole idea of like we're the center of the universe and we're at the bottom and everything's in front of us, and it's not like that at all. And that's why I like, that the photo from that the Pluto satellite they sent out like 40 years ago. That last picture it took, and we are barely a speck, and it's not that far away. And when you look at something like that, I feel like some people don't give a shit, but I always think like that is amazing and beautiful and horrifying. We're like in a beam of sunlight, and we're just like, you ever see a fleck of dust floating in your room in the afternoon sun? You're like, that's us. That's what we are. Like, that's all it is.
I think Carl Sagan very famously said, like, turn the camera around and face the Earth, and then it was like the whole thing he said about the pale blue dot, like
Yeah.
this little dot in space. Everybody you've ever known, who's ever lived or died, is in that little dot in the middle of space, and like the infinitude of things is hard to fathom. But if you start to try, then that's when you start getting into these other states. If you kind of ignore, like, oh, I can't really imagine that, or it's like too big for me to think about, you know, you kind of just stay in the same state, and you just like take everything that you see for granted. But when you start thinking about like the size and extent of things, and like the nature of time and space, and what life is, even, it just puts you in a different mental space where you're like, this isn't real. I mean, it's real, but it's not all that's real. So in a sense, this is like not enough realness, just the physical realm, because there's more that's real than that. And the experience of it's a simultaneous experience of being in this realm, and then also realizing, like, and accessing other realms and realities, is like, it seems kind of like a schizophrenic thought, where, and then all of these things are talking, because there's creatures and stuff there, and then, you know, it's you. But then I start wondering, like, I don't know, I've seen things like life where I'm like other life forms of life where I'm like, I'm not sure if that's me. And I think there's states where you start to see things that are, I mean, obviously everything is a symbiosis, like I'm talking to you and we are separate beings, but in a sense we are all of us are still one being, right? Because we're just life that's emerged into these forms from like some fundamental life source. So like we're the same, but we're not. And there's a lot of that, like, there's a lot of those simultaneous truths where it's like, it doesn't make sense that these two things should be true at once, but they are. And it just depends on your perspective, your frame of reference, if you will. Yeah, there's a lot of things that are simultaneously true that seem like don't make sense, but they do. You have to look at it differently.
I agree with that. I think perspective,
I don't know.
is,
It's hard.
it's important, perspective. You know, even just on an interpersonal level. You know, like you said, I'm talking to you, you're talking to me, two people in two different places using a plastic and you know, copper, and we're talking, but the same thing. You know, this the same life force, but in different forms. You know, experiencing each other, but also completely not. Like, I'm not in your head. I always think about that. That's something I think about too. I drive myself crazy with. What do I look like, physically look like, or appear to, or how am I experienced through someone else's eyeballs? You know, it's something you could almost never know. You could tell me everything with like almost like photographic, you know, accuracy, and you know, have like some kind of phonographic, you know, perfection, and be able to, like, this is exactly how you sound, this is exactly what you look like, this is exactly how you come off, and it's just not enough of like how I'm perceiving everything else. Like, you know, how do we share that? Or I'll drive myself crazy thinking about like, you know, like you said, the multitude of realities existing in this reality. So in the sense of, you know, the colors that we see and the things that we, you know, our five senses, but at the same time, we're not seeing so much. Almost all of light is completely not, you know, we're blind to it, and sound, and you know, we're just like, our entire reality is based on those five senses, and even those are dulled to like just comfortable familiarity. You know, it's like how many times when I went to like Utah and Colorado and Washington and Wyoming and Montana, every day I was like, holy shit, like this is amazing. But people are driving by the scene because it's just the side of the road to them. It's that kind of thing. That's sort of like the habitualness of humanity. We just kind of like compartmentalize so many things that we could be missing out on so much simply because we got to get somewhere. I got to go eat. I got to go sleep. I got to go to the bathroom or whatever it is. We're you know, focused on our vision is I don't know what the right word is. It's like it's flawed to begin with, but it's even more narrowed in focus because we're just have like almost like, you know, metaphorical blinders up too. So like that, like you said, like how many like when you said physicists are so closed-minded, to me that like makes my head want to explode. But I get it. When your sole existence is to like, I want to prove this thing, all the other things around it and kind of go away, and like you would miss something that could be significant is just missed. How many times a day is that happening in all aspects of life where things are just getting missed because you're not looking for it? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's something about like, I think part of the being in a neurodot is like chasing that novelty, that feeling of like the awakened experience, like looking for things that will cause awe or like just change in perception or awareness, like chasing that.
Mm-hmm.
And like and not, that's not to say that like you don't appreciate the things that you've seen, because it's not like chasing novelty in the sense that like, oh, I need a new phone every time that, you know, that upgrades and I don't, you know, whatever is obsolete I don't care about anymore. It's different with like doing that with reality, because when you do that with reality, it sort of builds on itself, and it's not like getting rid of an old phone, because you build on the experiences that you've had. So if you've experienced like beauty in this one thing, and then you see it like maybe a semblance of it in something else, which you will, because reality is fractal. You're going to see self-similarity in everything. Which are you familiar with fractal geometry?
Yeah, a little bit.
One of its aspects is that it's self-similar, so that wherever you look in reality, it contains all of the information about all reality. So you will see self-similar, it could be shapes, it could be like just things that are like similar sounds you might hear. If we're talking about beauty in particular, like you might see a beautiful shape and then like see it again somewhere else, and that like thing that you've pinpointed as beautiful is like this aspect of reality that you're seeing in these different things. So like when you've had a previous experience of this, and then you're searching in novelty for some new sense of awe or awakening, and then you see this beauty again that's like similar in reality, that's like that's the process, and it just builds on itself. So it's not like forgetting the old thing. It's like now I have what is it, this like repertoire, like this like collection of things that I consider beautiful. And I when I write a poem or something, I might incorporate these things that I see that are similar, that have moved me. Like it's kind of like never letting yourself get too like static or stuck or bored or stationary, and not letting yourself not be like moved or taken aback or like in awe of things.
Mm-hmm.
So like for example, I move around a lot, so I don't like to stay in one place for too long, and I like to like just spontaneously go and like visit somewhere. And it's because I'm looking for something. I want to change my space and like see something new, like experience something new, and I want to continually awaken this like feeling of life inside me by having experiences and seeking out those experiences that like make me feel that. And like sometimes it's a thing, sometimes it's a person, and it's always very cool when it's a person, because then you can bounce things back and forth, because I mean, in a way, this is kind of another schizophrenic thing, but in a way, reality like reacts back to you. Like the more that you perceive it, the more it will show to you. And the more appreciation you have for something, like you look for things, the more it will reflect to you. And so like that's one of the aspects of like when you define life, that it has a response.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think we need to expand our ideas of what we think of as what a response is.
Yeah.
The universe responds to you when you pay attention to things, and then you start seeing like synchronicities and things like this. That's a response. This is a real occurrence. But I would say like the pinnacle of that reflective response that you would find in reality is with another human being, because I think that's like the other most alive thing in the universe that you can find. So when you're having a conversation with another person and you're bouncing ideas off of each other, and you're in flow and you're in that level, and you both like have a certain gnosis, like direct experiential understanding of what we're both talking about, like that is the deepest kind of reflection that you can have. And so
Yeah.
I seek that too. Like I don't really like talking to too many people or like big groups, but I like getting into it with someone that I can talk to like that, because that's the ultimate thing right there. And you know, and it can get deeper than that, even if you like start to have a romantic connection with that person. I feel like that's an even deeper connection than just colloquial level, and then you have friendship level, and then you have love, which is another dimension altogether. But I feel like with other people, that's the ultimate reflection. And
Yeah, talking to another person, it's like talking to the universe, but you guys speak the same language. That's pretty much what it is. You know, it's like, but okay. So what you said before, I like that, because I definitely, the synchronicities and also the response. So I have a real, I've had many experiences with the response all the time, actually. And I guess like it's considered like, you know, you're an empath, or you know, some people think they're like psychics or medium, whatever. I don't think I'm a psychic or anything like that. But I said this to my friend the other day. I said to her, I'm off on Sundays now because I'm working again, but I've been driving out to Orient Point a lot. I like the North Shore beaches. It's rocky. It's kind of cool. And I went there last week, and you know, I had a fine time. I go there and I just find rocks that I think look nice, whatever. I bring them home, I stare at them, whatever. And so I walk up and down the beach, and I was kind of bummed when I got back, and we were talking, we're chatting online, and she's like, you know, I was like, you know, I felt like the beach like didn't want me today. It sounds weird and sad, but I was like, that's how I felt. Felt like the beach really like was almost like very impersonal. Usually that's not how I feel. I feel like it's not like a egocentric. It's almost like, you know, like I look at it like you look at the world and or the reality or the space you're in or the company, and it looks back, you know, without eyeballs most of the time. but I feel that. I feel like I'm looking out and it's looking. The very act of me looking at it it is looking back. It's almost like that, the refractal light, however you want to break it down scientifically. Like I'm looking at things and all I'm really seeing is the light reflecting off of it back into my brain, but like it's like looking back at me. And I guess like what I was saying, like with people, it's the same thing. If I meet a person, or like even these videos I'm making, that's what this is. It's like I want to talk about this stuff. I talk about it on my own all the time. And I was like, who could I get to talk? You know, because when I'm talking to friends who I know are anxious, or like you get into it because like they're also like they relate. And now I'm like, oh, we're having this conversation that most people, I guess, who don't have the experience, don't either want to talk about or care about, or you know, it's not the same. Even if it's like a really good friend or someone you're in a relationship with, and or a relative, if I start telling someone about my anxiety, I get usually one of two responses is, you know, polite, cordial, like, oh, okay, and or they kind of feel like, how do I help you? Can I fix you? Like, is everything okay? It's like, I'm fine. I'm just saying, like, the demons are real, but like, it's okay. I'm fine. Whatever. It's good. But but yeah, I get that. I totally understand that, and I relate to that. Like, I feel that often because I do the same thing. Like, I like to call it, you know, you can't really get lost on Long Island. You know, either you go east and you hit Montauk, or north and south, you're hitting water. There's no way you can get lost. And I used to often just get in my car and like just make turns. Where are these roads going to take me? And bring my camera just in case I saw something I want to take a picture of. But and just do that. And like even like I can go to the North Shore. I can go 12 miles from here and be at the beach, but I drive 2 hours or an hour and a half to Orient just for whatever. I like that beach for whatever reason, so I'll just like do a 5-hour round trip drive out there just to like hang out there for 45 minutes. And when I was doing my trip from August to October, 7 weeks by myself on the road, I was exactly that. I was, just like every day or every, 36 hours, let's say, I would stay at a place for a day or day and a half. Okay, where to next? And people are always like, where are you going? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I know I'm going to go to this state, but like,
Yeah.
we'll see when I get there. Like, people did not understand. They're like, where are you going? Why are you going out there? It's like, I don't know. I just want to see it. I had a few people I want to see along the way. I kind of use them as like buoys. Like, okay, I'll go to the middle of the country. I could see these two people, and then head north. I didn't know anybody in Montana and Wyoming, but like, all right, I just want to go. Let's. If the bus was faster and I had more money, I'd probably still be out there. Like, just sort of like doing that. Literally, not to take pictures. I didn't want to go see like Disneyland or whatever. I wanted to just like go where nobody was, and or just wherever. Like, I would literally just pull over all the time. Like, oh, what's this? And it's nowhere. It's not a particular place on the map, but to me, I was like, this is nice. I like this place, and I'll just hang out, for whatever reason. So I totally get that a lot.
Yeah, it's like we've built up all these places where we're supposed to go to entertain ourselves, but there's the whole universe where, nothing. It's not superficial or contrived, and I mean, you could still have fun. You could have fun anywhere, but we build all these places. Like,
just to be clear, I'm not knocking Six Flags or anything. I'm just saying, like, me personally, it's not for me. It's not for me.
Yeah. But there's those things I find like they don't really bring us back to ourselves, or like the deep sense of understanding that maybe we want to touch on. Like, those are not the places to go to do that. And it's like you go into nature and you just stop into these random spots and like feel out what's there, and you meet random people and like just see what happens. And it's more that is like raw and real, and you don't know what to expect with that. That's like complete the raw potential of that is something something to unfold. Like in these other places, you go there and you know what's going to happen, right? You're going there for a specific experience. Like, it's been built for that. But when you go on adventures and like you have no idea where you're going, and you don't know where you're going to end up or what you're going to find, like, see, that's very terrifying to a lot of people. And I think that causes a lot of mental distress, because that sense of unknowing, like, I think when we build places and then people go to those places, they sort of like identify their sense of self with what that place is, because, oh, this is something solid that's been created that I know I can relate to, and there's borders and boundaries that I understand. Whereas the real understanding of your deep self is not this thing that you can ever grasp entirely. And then when you go and explore these places and you're not sure where you're going, you're sort of like also exploring your inner self, and you're not sure where you're going. Like, you're not sure what reaction you're going to have to whatever happens. And that is infinite. That experience is something that can't be, it's boundless. You can't put borders on it. It's just something that is continually unfolding. And that is like, some people might argue that because there's no final form or whatever, that it means you don't actually understand it. But there's different types of understanding. And like, some of the deepest things can't be understood directly or completely. And that doesn't mean that you don't understand them. And to like, I think to kind of reconcile yourself and to find a sort of like a mental stability with that instability and unknowingness, and like that is part of what I wanted to define in this conversation is like what it means to be, what is mental health, and like what does it mean to be mentally healthy. So I do feel like that is part of it. And I'm interested to hear like what your interpretation of those definitions are.
Mental health, like so like, all right, so when pandemic hit, I'm doing pretty good at this point, like January, February. I'm like, at this point, I'm like in the process of telling my therapist that, oh, I'm going to wean myself away from her, from like once a week to twice a month to once a month to I don't need her anymore. Then pandemic hits around, end of March. I stopped working, and I know this is like the longest answer, but I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna get.
Okay.
Just hang back and meet me at the end. Meet me at the finish line. So,
okay.
Immediately, this was like the real test for my anxiety and my overthinking, because this is literal, unprecedented chaos. That we're, as a whole, it's like a group experiment almost. It's one thing to be, like you said, I hermit too. I'm like being by myself and being quiet and entertaining myself. Like, yeah, this is like nothing for me. But what makes it another level of anxiety, or the anxiety is another level, because right outside the walls, it's the same thing, but it's like under duress. I feel like so many people feel like they're under duress because they can't go to the bar and they can't go to the supermarket. They got to wear a mask, and everything's uncertain, and I can almost like feel the intangible, unspoken uncertainty in the air. It's almost like a pheromone or something like that, where I can feel like it's like I can't describe it. There's no, I can't verbalize it, but I could feel it. So that's where I was, and then months were going by, and then I decided, because that's eventually what started to happen, was I was starting to freak out, because I was like, can I just go anywhere? Like, I could just go to the beach because no one's there. And I was driving around the island a little bit, but not very much, because I kind of had my own space. I had my backyard and my own, room and my own space to do what I wanted. And then I just bought a bus and just text messaged people like, hey, can I come see you? I'll be there in like 3 weeks. And can I come see you? I should be there around a month or whatever. And just sort of like pointed my bus in a direction and just drove. I didn't map it out. I didn't do any other things. And I just sort of like for 7 weeks. I thought it would be about a month. It ended up being almost twice as long, 10,000 miles or something like that I drove. And I lived in that space for 7 weeks by myself. I was never in a place for too long. I mean, I got to the Grand Canyon, one of the most beautiful parts of the world, I would argue. And I was there for, I was outside for 3 days, but I was at the Grand Canyon for maybe 4 hours. And I was like, oh, that was nice. And I just moved on, to the next thing, the next part of the desert or whatever. And so I definitely lived in that that space. So as far as mental health is concerned, I agree. To me, mental health is a word we hear, a phrase we hear all the time, or a term, mental health. And I think what most people, even doctors, probably mean when they say it is everyone should be like this, and some people are outside of that. And how do we get them back into the center? And for me, I think mental health, like when I think about it, it's like you said earlier when we were earlier in the video, it's not just, you can't just be calm. Home base calm is good, and we want to be calm. You can't be unraveling and become unglued at any minute. That's not healthy for you or for anybody. But just being calm, just being in this sort of like gray whatever minutia of life, just like day in and day out, that's not good either. So for me, mental health is like a well-rounded acknowledgement of yourself, in the sense that everyone has anxiety, everyone probably has some level of sadness. I don't know if they call it clinical depression, but I feel like everyone has a little bit of these things, and some people have more, or the balance is not the same. So your mental health and my mental health are not the same. My parents, your friends, your loved ones, they're not the same. However, when I think people talk about it's like it just means to be calm and to be complacent or happy and just to get on with your life and just move forward and live your day, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's not that. It's more to the extent of getting to know me. I always think about how many people have died and they never got to know themselves at all. They were good people, good parents, good husbands or wives, good children. They were good cousins, uncles, aunts, brothers, and sisters, but they kind of went to the grave. Like, I feel like the way I picture it in my head is like they got like a whiff or a sense of the other in there, and we're like, ooh, no, 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 and never, ever, ever, ever talk to that thing or let it out or played with it, or even a little bit. I'm not talking about you have to be schizophrenic or completely become completely disassociative or something like that, or have like severe depersonalization and be hospitalized. But it's a part of it, just as much a part of you as all the boring, mundane, happy stuff. So to me, mental health, like it's hard to define. I'm going on with my answer. I mean, to me, it's just more of like a combination of things. It's like I stopped seeking happiness not a long time ago, but it's not my goal, not the end game. I want to be just happy, or I want to just be calm, or I want to just be safe. I mean, we're all happiness, calmness, safe, joy, ecstasy, anger. They're all the same. They come from the same place. It's just how much. You can't live. I don't think you should or could live in one of those things. So what's the balance? People with anxiety, that's their imbalance. They are in a more hypersensitive state. People with depression are in the opposite. Whatever the convex of that, where they're not. They're just you're almost not feeling anything. It's not I'm super sad or I'm super mad. I feel like I'm in purgatory of life of some kind. So, it's like one of the things is not enough. You need a little bit of all the colors of the rainbow kind of thing. And to me, that's what mental health is like. Just getting to know the things that are in there, because that's how I look at it. There's things in there. I talk to them. It's me. It's not other voices or anything like that. It's not like a deeper, it's not like that level of voices. I know some people do have that, but it's just me. I'm talking to me at all times, but like different versions, different shades of me, colors and emotions of me, like that. That's how I look at it. So I said this year sort of like opened it up, because I was forced to have to deal with, like we all were, to deal with this, and to have this, you know, I've always been introspective, having anxiety and dealing with it. And I feel like you said earlier in the video, a lot of people were forced to be introspective. Some people did their best. Some people, you know, put bullhorns on their head and stormed the Capitol building. That's how they dealt with their. So like there's like when I look at that, that's what I look at. The conspiracy stuff, all the crazy political nonsense from this year. That's their interest. They went in and they didn't know what to do with themselves, so they looked for something else to latch onto, and what was out there was just chaos. And they're like, okay, I want that. I'm gonna, you know, and they believe this without a shadow of a doubt. It's just like different ends of there's different sides of the coin, different sides of fear, different sides of anxiety. Some people went in and shut down, and some people became that, you know. So to me, that's, I guess, I don't know if I answered the question great, but that's my answer. Mental health is like a well-rounded getting to know yourself. Like, who am I? I want to die knowing, you know, as much about who I am and how I interact with the world as possible. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I think you made a lot of like really great points there.
I said a lot of things.
It makes you did say a lot of things, but I like when people do that. I'm able to follow that. Like it's what you said made sense, and like also something that you're pointing out that just keeps coming back is like there's different ends of polarity of things where it's not really good to be on either of them. Like it's not good to have no interaction with the world, but it's also not good to be be completely lost and out of touch with a continuous reality. Like you're lost somewhere. So you don't want to be like just talking to the voices, and you don't want to be like not interacting. And there's always, you know, the opposite end of polarity, and we have to find like some middle ground there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you said in different words what I also think about what mental health really is. I think that, well, I think society thinks that mental health is like you're in a healthy place, and there's like a place you should be that means you're healthy, where you're calm and you can deal with things. And I actually don't think that that's healthy. And like, because first of all, you have so many different people that might not fit into that description of normalcy. I don't think we have the authority to say what is normal, because, you know, it really is like there is no normal.
Yeah, we made it up.
Everybody, right. It's like we made up time or space, but those are other, you know,
yeah.
things of perception. Like people have their normal, and that what is normal for one person is not normal for another person, and that doesn't make either one of them crazy. I mean, they're also going to be crazy in their own ways, but like, just because your normalcy is different than another person's doesn't mean, you know, one person's better or healthier or whatever. But getting back to the definition, what I really think mental health is this it's like it's a process. It's a happening. It's like mental health is this like action of dealing with the different aspects of yourself as you come to interact with them. And it's a continual thing that keeps happening, and it's not a static state, and it will change over time, and it will be different for different people. But it involves integrating and interacting with all of the different facets of yourself and the types of understanding that you have access to. Like, there's intellectual understanding of yourself, there's like emotional understanding of yourself, there's spiritual understanding. I don't know if I've always tried to like delineate between types of understanding, and I wonder which ones like blend together or which one should be its own category and things like this. But I don't know. I might need to have more discussions with people to like actually figure that out. Which, you know what, I actually think that that is part of the reason why we exist as separate things. Like, not only do we exist because the universe wanted to experience it itself, because if you're the universe, right, and you're just this one thing, you can't look at yourself because you need a separate pair of eyes in order to look at yourself. But if you're all one thing, then you don't have a separate pair of eyes. So you might, and then if you're going to look at yourself, you might as well make all of these like multitudinous facets to look at yourself. So you have all these perspectives, because why not? Why would you just make one? And so we exist separately for the experience of the universe experiencing it itself, but also so we can experience each other. Like, our experience of ourselves will never be the same as an interaction with someone. Like, your experience of yourself with someone is like this kind of third place, because you have your experience of yourself and that person has their experience of themselves, and then you have this experience of each other, which is like a third state. And I don't know, we sort of like, we can't look at ourselves in certain ways. Like, we can't look at our own eyeballs. So we need somebody else to look at us and like give us some reflection. And even though it will never be exactly the experience from that person's eyes, we still have that reflection from that person. And all of these interactions are making the universe more alive, because you're bringing, you're like extracting experiences that wouldn't have happened if you didn't have the interaction with these things.
No, I 100% agree with that. It's like an easy experiment is watch a movie by yourself. You'll definitely enjoy it. I mean, if you like the movie, watch it with somebody else who you consider a friend, or like, and then have that shit. So it's like like I asked about your music, like the binaural. One sound is one sound, another sound is its own thing. Put them together, and you create a third sound. And it's almost
Exactly.
like we can go on for 5 more hours about the vibrational, connectivity of people. Where I agree. If I go like, I was out there by myself for 2 months and I loved every second of it, but there was a part of me that would think that not every day. I do like being alone, and it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. But there was definitely a part of me like, I wish, like some days, like I wish I had someone here with me, like to see it, and so we can both experience the same thing for the first time together, that kind of thing. And so I definitely agree with that. That there's the you can't see yourself. I can't ask you like, so like, how am I? I can't ask you if I was with you someplace. How am I experiencing this? That's a crazy question. I might, although I might ask something like that to some people, like, and they might think I might need help, but like I do think that, like, like how, like almost like that thing when you are taking psychedelics or a substance, you like you look at the other person, like, am I okay? It's like, wow, I don't know. Probably not if you're asking me.
Right.
And but no, I agree. There's like that thing of, we are the universe experience. So whether it's wisdom or chemical chance, the universe created things inside of itself that can look at it and go like, oh, this is everything, like the fact that we call it the universe, we made that up. Everything we do, we make up. Like I said, what's normal, based on what, it's like, it's almost like, most of our information and most of our notions are almost statistical, where it's like statistically most people agree to this, so like that's what it is. I mean, so obviously when you're dealing with like physics and mathematics, it's more more precise. It's like, it either is or it isn't. There is almost no gray area. But I agree that like if I go to the beach tomorrow, and I'm by myself, I will enjoy it. I'll have a good time. I'm not going to be like bursting out in hysterical laughter all by myself, but I will be enjoying it.
I will do that.
Yeah. I mean, I occasionally, but I'm not just like constantly skipping around, just like, ha, ah, screaming laughter. But when you're with another person,
Yeah.
there's that almost thing. It's like, it's nonverbal when you could look over at the other person or make eye contact, or even just the fact that you're there. It's almost like you guys are both giving off either a vibration or an actual chemical that is now mixing, either again in the air it's mixing, or like the fact that we are part, we're matter, and it's sort of like they're intermingling. There is like almost like a nonverbal, indescribable something, connection, whatever you want to call it, experience that's happening that is definitely not the same. So it's like, the one, it's like 1 + 1 is not 2. 1 + 1 is like 3 or something like that. So I agree. I do agree with that. I like that.
So that is a literal thought that I have all the time. And you know what? It's because I have been alone that I've been able to have that like realization and appreciation. Like I often think, wow, this is gorgeous, and I appreciate this so much, and I will remember this. But I also wish that I had someone to share this with. So like having a moment like that alone shows me not only how much I appreciate my alone time, but also like how important it is to also share things with people. So like it made me realize that like we need both of these things. We need the like introspection time for ourselves in order to understand ourselves. And then we also need to share things with people in order to understand ourselves. And these are like two different ways of understanding. But they're both very important. And I will yearn for one or the other, like depending on where I am or what my mood is and stuff. And all of it is important. But one thing you said was like, oh, how am I experiencing this right now? I feel like that would be a funny question to ask someone, and then like have them parody being you, like, oh, blah, 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 and like have them like see how well they understand you by like pretending to experience the thing the way you do. And I would find a lot of amusement in that. So I might actually ask that question, and like hopefully I'm with a person that would understand that that's what I'm actually saying. Not like tell me what my experience is, like I'm having a crisis, but like make fun of me, please. I want to see your interpretation of me.
Because I've been in, I don't know if I'd necessarily call it a crisis, but I have had mental, once you get yourself so overstimulated, you are in, I guess, in a crisis of sorts. And that is how I almost, a lot of people with anxiety will call that, we need lots of, reassurance, where I ask people like, hey, have you ever felt like this or thought this or had this happen? Because you want to hear what you want to hear to make yourself feel better, that sort of thing. And I would get sneaky about it too. Like I'd be like talking to someone, especially in text, it's easier. Like talking to someone instant message, on a messenger, and you're like, oh yeah, my leg was hurting today, like because I did this, and I would give like the most specific thing that I did, and be like, did that ever happen to you? And hope to God they'd say, yeah, that's happened to me a million times. And that sort of reassurance. But I think it's in the same, like me wanting to ask that question. It's almost like the same animal, where I'm like, I do have the urge, or I've had that, and I don't have it too often, but the urge to be like, look at the other person and be like, like, how do I, you're enjoying yourself, I'm enjoying myself, but like, how am I enjoying this, or how much do you think I'm enjoying, something like that, something along the lines of like, and I don't know where it comes from. It's not, specifically reassurance or something like that. It could be like along the lines of like almost experimental. Like I want to know, based on your observation, what's happening over here in my space is. And also there is a little bit, I admit, there's a little bit of like, can I really trust my brain? Like, am I interpreting this the way correctly? Or that, again, that's where the overthinking comes in. Like, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? Am I experiencing? And that's where you kind of lose the moment, and again, that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, I do think those weird, and again, I've only tripped one time in my life, but I've been on other substances that are similar, and you do have that. Like, I overdosed on like edibles one time, maybe 7-8 years ago, and I did ask my girlfriend at the time, we lived together, like, am I okay? Like, am I okay right now? Am I good? She's like, yeah, you're fine. What are you talking about? I was like, oh, good, 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 good. Like, if she would have told me no, which how could she even know? Yeah, I would have fucking spiraled, and I would have, like, walked into traffic or something. I don't know what would have happened. But.
I feel like a little bit of that questioning is healthy and like unavoidable. If you're a philosopher, you have to doubt everything. But it's like, how deep are you going to go into that doubt that like makes it out of control? So like, if you're able to ask the question without like diving into the abyss, which is like, I feel like I'm on the edge of the abyss, like trying not to fall in like most of my life. I just want to look over the edge, and I want to ask the question. I don't want to be too afraid to ask the question. Even I shouldn't be afraid to ask anything, but I feel like, because I don't know, it's absolutely an experiment. I just want to see what the answer is. I want to see like what people's interpretations are. But not falling down the hole, that's a delicate thing, I think.
How often would you say? So my theory is on the abyss is this. For a long time, I would find myself falling into the abyss, and it felt like I had no power over it. Like, I would just bring myself to a state, and again, this is with mental health, like whether it was anxiety or depression, or to the point where I'll get like depersonalization and like lose myself in myself kind of thing. And but I do have a theory, and is that how often now or recently would you say you go into the abyss? You fall, because I think it's letting. Like, how often do you let yourself, even just a little bit? Like, I'll do it for like an hour. I'll let myself go into deep water, or go to past the buoys, so to speak. Like, yeah, let's play with the darkness a little bit. I want to be able, like in Gattaca, you want to make sure you have enough to come back, right? Do you ever
Exactly. Yes, we should go down the rabbit hole. I think it's important to like still explore there. The darkness is there. You should look at it. You should interact with it. But you have to. You don't want to go in and lose yourself. That's the main thing. That's probably my biggest fear, which I can't believe I'm like saying on camera, but I guess maybe it's a lot of people's fears,
Yeah.
Losing yourself completely. I think I do this often. So I say that I'm trying to avoid going into the abyss, but when I say that, what I really mean is going in and not coming back out, which obviously every time that I've gone in so far, even times when I thought I wouldn't make it out, I have so far. But I don't want to go in and not make it out. That's what I mean by avoiding the abyss. But I don't mean that I'm avoiding it entirely. Like, in a way, it's fascinating to me,
Yeah.
I'm not entirely satisfied having a conversation with a person if they have no idea what I'm talking about with that, because that's part of the profundity of existence, is like this dark place.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that you just you can't see or understand if you don't know that place. And you do have to keep going back there, because the more that you experience, the more that you take back with you. And then when you re-experience something, then it becomes a new experience again. So it's not like, oh, you go in and like, oh, I was there, you know, I seen that. Like, it's not like that. It's kind of not even like that with anything. You just re-experiencing things with new experiences and information, and like the transformation of the thing you've become, that is important and different every time. So
No, I agree 100%. The way I like to, the way I look at the whatever you want to call it, the shadow, the abyss, the darkness, I have lots of metaphors. I mean, I think at best, on like a good, just regular old Tuesday, you know, to me, it's not even the abyss. It's almost like immersion therapy. I am feeling a feeling, or something's playing over my brain. I have to do something about it, because I know that in the past, if you do nothing and just let yourself get, you know, rile yourself up, or build it up and overthink it, and toil over it, it'll manifest in one way or another: depression, a panic attack, whatever. So I gotta go in a little bit. I gotta, like, all right, let me just see what's going on. And you know, I have more tools now, so I can sort of like you said, I come back, I take a little bit back, and you defragment, you kind of like fix it, or I don't. These aren't the right terms. It's not like an actual, you know, tangible thing, but then sometimes I have levels to the how far I'll go in. So that's like your regular, you know, Wednesday afternoon. I'm feeling a little anxious at work, and I need to sit in my van by myself and vape for 25 minutes and just sort of like figure out what's going on inside. Where are these? What's coming from? Are these feelings? You know, that kind of thing. And then also, now that's the minimum. The most, which I don't do very often because it is scary, is I'm like Ahab, and I just sort of like steer the ship far in. I'm just like, you know, in my metaphorical brain, the men are like, please turn around. I'm like, no, we're good. It's no going back. You know, and like that's how I look at it. I mean, I'd say 50% of my poetry is that, talking about being in there, and something comes back with you, or the actual going in and the consequences of, you know, because there's been times where it's like deliberate, like I make that turn, or the fork in the road comes up, and I just go fuck it, and I go in, and it's unpleasant for the most part. But then, you know, I'm here, I'm back mentally. Obviously, I'm here. But there have been occasions where it's almost like like hubris, where it's like, I'm fine, I can do this, and then by the time you realize like you're way too far to come back, it like without having some consequence, I find myself there, not as often as I used to, but it happens occasionally where I get too like you know, I don't know, like I said, it's like it's just pure, you know, ego. Like I'm fine, I can handle this, I've been here, I'm doing, I could just let the monster roam around, as long as I keep him inside this perimeter. But then, like Jurassic Park, the electric's out and they get out of the perimeter, and I don't, you know, it's too late. Now I gotta wrangle them all up. And Jeff Goldblum's nowhere to be around to help me, so like that's how I, you know. But like, yeah, I agree. It's almost like people who say things like, I don't trust people who don't curse. If they don't like say fuck or shit or whatever, it's not like I don't trust you, or I don't want to speak to you, or I don't want to get to know you, but I definitely light up when you're talking to someone. You'd be like, aha, you're broken too. Like, okay. All right.
well, because I gotta say, like, it's not all about love and light. Like, you know, that the universe is dark, part dark, and so are you.
Yeah.
And I actually find like things that are fascinating and beautiful there, and in ways that you can't find outside of the darkness. So I think I might like romanticize it even a little bit, and I think I'm definitely not the only person that does that. But there is something beautiful that I don't even know how to. I would need to think about it more. And I think it's better probably either unsaid or hinted about in poetry, which I think is probably the only way to talk about it, really. But yeah, if you avoid that, you actually, like, it does manifest in other ways, and you're like creating ugly things. And like that ugly thing might be manifestations of like things, or like you might become, depending on how long and how much you're avoiding it, you might become a monster yourself and really not even know it, because you've been just burying this part and dissociating from that part, that you don't even know that the ways you've been coping with it have made you into something horrific. And you might actually think that you're like all that. Like, I've met people like that, and I'm like, you have no idea of the darkness. Which is and I also know that, like, that ego part where you're like in it, you're like, nah, I'm fine. And I feel like the times when I'm most hilarious are during that. Like, my best comedy comes out during that, and I'm like, I'm brilliant. Like, they're funny as hell. Like, I don't know, I think of things that I wouldn't have thought. So, but at least, you know, at least I become aware. Either I'm aware that I'm doing it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna do this. Fuck it, you know, or I become aware, and I'm like, all right, well, we need to get back to actually do something helpful here.
Yeah, it's exactly that, where and it's not so much of like deep, dark, brooding, sitting in a corner somewhere, like, you know, swirling.
Not necessarily.
You know, it's more like okay, so what you said, that's interesting, where your comedy, or your like more gregarious self will come out. I feel like that's a part of it too. Like, there's, for me, it's like levels. There's like there are levels where it's like just me by myself. I'm in my head. No one has any idea. I'm not sharing this, and I could be having a conversation while it's happening. Where, you know, or there's like the higher levels of you know, being in putting yourself in that space, and over time I've gotten comfortable with certain aspects of it. And the beautiful part for me, where I also read something beautiful comes out of it, most of the time is much after the fact, you know, a day later, 2 days later, 12 hours later. There's some like a half-life there, where then you kind of can look back at like what happened before, what happened during, and then after. You're like, oh, all right, so either I get something creative out of it. Usually for me it's poetry, or cool ideas, maybe most which I will never do or chase after, but definitely cool ideas, or almost like revelations about myself or other people, or situations. Like, you know, the older you get, I think, like you said, people get stuck, and their mind's made up about the world around them, and you know, and unless they're actually like flabbergasted in some way, like, you know, like something terrible happens in their life, or something amazing out of the blue, they're just sort of like even keel, just sort of like going along, and, you know, in kind of like you know, steady seas. But I do again, for me, it's back and forth. Sometimes I'm doing it on purpose. I am like seeing the dark clouds, and just turning that wheel, and let's do it. Let's go. Let's see what happens. Or sometimes I don't know you don't know you're in it, you know, and until you're in it, and then you're like, oh shit, like I'm like, now I got to get back, because you know, I don't truly think the person that I am. I can only speak for myself, that I would, quote unquote, never come back, or, you know, like lose my mind or whatever. However, I do know that uh, what I want to say is, it feels like that I trust that, of course, I will come back. But is there a is there a way or a mistake I could make? Again, I'm talking about it in the sense of like I'm doing an actual physical thing, and you understand. It's like I'm not doing anything. It's mostly it's all inside, and it's almost like this like your thought patterns change, and so it's not so much like won't come back for me. It's more like what are the consequences? Will I be the same person? Like, could I actually, I guess I could technically, like, snap, and like you said, some people, they never do it. They never ever dip their toe in, and then they either have a midlife crisis or a nervous breakdown or just become miserable. People just become all that. It's almost like sleep. If you don't sleep, like you refuse to sleep, your body's just gonna sleep. It's gonna happen. Like whether you like it or not, you're gonna go to sleep. Whether you like it or not, you could be standing and your body will just drop you and sleep. Same thing. Whether you like it or not, you're gonna have to face yourself one way or another. It's gonna happen. And if you don't do it, or worse, you fight it, you refuse it, we see it. It happens in society all the time. People snap, or suicide, or homicide, or something in that nature. People just kind of break, and yeah, that's what I think.
So there's two things I want to say. The first is like going into that dark space is going outside of the comfort zone. It's going into that different state of consciousness. So you were saying that you go there and then you have to come back and reflect. That's kind of what we were saying before, where like when you go into these places, you have this experience and you're immersed in it. But like a lot of the understanding doesn't happen until you come back out and into the safe space to really like piece things together and like find some meaning in that calm place. The other thing that I would say is like probably the most profound aspect of the darkness is like, I think there's only so much that you can learn in the light of day. And me personally, I would say that like the darkness and pain has been my greatest teacher. Like there's nothing so profoundly instructive as going through something, going through the darkness and then coming back and reflecting on that. Like things in the light don't rip you apart the way that the darkness does. And if you only kind of like stay in those things, I'm almost kind of frustrated with people that don't know what it means to be broken. And it's not that I'm saying that I want people to be broken, but I hope that people understand. There's a price to pay definitely for a certain type of understanding, and it's like kind of unavoidable for people who are deep intellectuals it's unavoidable to not have pain. Just from thinking so deeply, we get into the dark spaces because that is where the deepest understanding is. And I don't know why. I'm not really sure why that is, because it seems so weighted, for me at least.
Well, there's debate. I mean, you've seen I'm sure you've seen like the research where there's scientific research to back that up. People with more, it's like the horse and the wagon. Is it people who have a higher? Because I hate even talking about like this intellectual, like it's not about better or worse, or like I'm super, like I'm a genius and you're not, or anything like that. It's like if you're a thinker, if you're thoughtful, you're going to do that a lot. Think and be thoughtful. And there's correlation between. So what is it? Is it because we're intellectuals, we're smarter or higher IQ, whatever it is? Is it we're just prone to the, like I said, pain or some sort of like quote unquote illness, or is it the other way around? Is the illness making you smarter because you can't just get by, you can't just function like every other person because you got this monkey on your back in so to speak. As I call it, it's Mr. Hyde. You know, I need to let him out and play sometimes. But when I was younger, I didn't have a control over it. It was just happening to me, and I always was smarter, but I never was like the top of the class or that. I always had people, you know, like, you know, you're very smart. They would say things like, you're too smart to be acting like this. You're too smart to do this. And I said, like, I don't understand what the fuck that means. And it was because, you know, and I've talked about this on like several videos already. You know, it takes me, and you can probably relate, and you know, people who watch these videos and with mental illness or any kind of I don't know what the right word is, disability of any kind, or you know, again, neurodivergent. It takes a much more energy to do like the typical stuff for me personally. You know, have a conversation, chit chat, for example. Chit chat. Like this right here is not chit chat.
No.
Chat. I will feel chit chat in the bottom of my feet, where I don't hate the person. I don't want to be rude. I'm not a rude person at all. I'm not even like snarky where it's like I'm too smart for this conversation. But there's a level of like how you doing kind of stuff where it's like, I don't care. I don't care.
That's a different kind of painful. Yes,
yeah, exactly.
Viscerally.
Yeah. Like I want to hit that. I want to like pull out like the target buzzer thing and be like, pop, I'm out, done. But yeah, like I totally.
So when that happens, I like to throw in weird things like, "What do you think about aliens?" Like, or I'll tell them I'm from another planet or something, and they'll be like, "What?"
Yeah, well, that's like a good way to find out like who you're talking to, because if you're talking to the right person, bringing up aliens or some ridiculous abstract something will either lead to a better conversation or end it. So like it's the bellwether.
I know.
Good.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've also had conversations where they're not that person that's like going to talk about it cool, but then it just, and the conversation doesn't end, but it just makes the conversation hilarious. And that also has its own worth. Yeah.
I judge myself pretty hard. Like for just in those kind of situations where I don't think I'm like better or smarter than like anybody. I don't. The more I know, the more I fucking don't know, and I realize that every day. It's that when you do bump into the people who think like they got it all figured out, they're gonna tell you how it's gonna be, and
That's
you just kind of like give them all this rope, you know. And we're living, and I think now of all times, now is the epitome of that, of people just like, I have all the information, and here's a 6-hour YouTube video, and I'm going to break down all of society as we know it, and it's fucking nonsense. But then you have a million people who go like, yep, and just like, you know, collectively nod their head, and now there's those people, and like they're in that reality or that, you know, field of information, whatever you want to call it. So there is a lot. It's like we're at like the, you know, like critical mass of douchebaggery and people who are just like full of shit, and it's annoying because even like I said, the way I question myself, like in a conversation or in a predicament or whatever, to let people just like say what they want, because anything could be, if it's not interesting, at the very least, like you said, it'll be funny, and it's funny. But then I even like kind of like judge myself for being like, you know, like either it goes both ways. Either am I laughing at this person, like at them, not with them, or am I the dummy? Like, am I talking and is everyone looking at me like I'm fucking, you know, don't know what I'm talking? Because like I'll do the almost have like the imposter syndrome of like speaking to someone, and I only usually talk about what I know. I'm not like trying to go out of my depths, and then I wonder like, is everyone here silently judging me, and am I the dum dum? Oh, is it me? Like, shit. And like so I go both ways, and again, it's just another, another aspect of like, of reality, just that back and forth, devil's advocate, multiple perspectives happening simultaneously. And as far as the dark, when you were talking about the dark, what I was saying is going there or like you were like putting yourself in that state, to put it like, simply, is like you got to get to know the devil, who is you. It's not like the actual like biblical devil, but like you got to get to know the devil, because it's you. And if you don't get to know him or her or whatever, however you want to look at it, that's how you get tripped up in life. If you don't know how the doubt or fear or anxiety, depression, chaos, uncertainty is working in your own self, you kind of can't really navigate. You can't navigate through life because you're not familiar. And for some people, maybe they're lucky enough where they don't do it on their own. They don't go inside and take a peek, and then something bad happens. And sure, there's a 50% chance they take it in stride and go on, or there's a 50% chance it just like derails their whole life. And because they have no, it's like never, learning how to swim and then jumping into the ocean. You're just going to drown. So like that's what I look at it too. Like,
Yeah, for sure. I think it was Neil Gaiman who said that like the reason that we make monsters in stories is so that you can meet them in real life and like know what you're looking at or something. I'm paraphrasing, but it's like yeah, and then yeah, maybe we create certain entities too, so we can like have discussions with them, if that's a thing that you do, which I think that I do.
I do. I do. I like to use, I guess I like to borrow things from literature, or mostly movies and music and stuff like that. That's really where my brain is. But yeah, Mr. Hyde is good. I like the Mr. Hyde metaphor. I get the story, whatever. He drank a thing and blah, blah. But like for me, that's what it is. And I talk about it sometimes only, usually with close friends. To me, it's comical, because in mixed company, it might seem like I actually think there's another person living inside my head who's making me do things and pulling strings. It's not like that, but I will personify the darkness often, where like I've had conversations with people, and not to give like, so in like the vein of like romanticism, right? So I'm talking to someone and like they're flirting or whatever, it's flirtatious conversations going on, and like this, let's say this person like knows me and knows like that entity is in there. They will like call up like, what's he doing? I'm like, he's pacing. He's I've locked him, like he's not just right behind my eyeballs, he's like sub-basement level 2. Like I can hear him, but like he's not at the keyboard, you know what I mean? Like he's not like in control. But like, what's he doing? Like he's pacing the halls, and he's he's telling me like, he's like, let me out just for like 5 minutes. And it's like, bro, it's never 5 minutes, number one. And number two, like, not today. Like I'm busy. It's like that kind of thing. I know that sounds ridiculous because it's not an actual entity of any kind, but I do, being a writer, I am a storyteller. I do like to personify. I like to give the intangible dark and the light sort of like a name or a face, or like or a personality in a sense. Like, so I'm, I refer to them like they're like there, but they're not. It's not like I got another guy whispering my ear. I know that's another kind of mental illness. I don't have that, but maybe you can relate to that. I definitely give them like I definitely. Or like when I'm angry, when I'm angry, like I like to visualize the physical or chemical like interpretation of me not being in a good mood. Like that part of my brain will take on a different shade of color, or a different temperament or whatever you want to call it. So it's like that. It just goes. It's just like I said, I just like to give the darkness and the intangible, unspoken thing, sort of like a costume of sorts, that kind of thing.
I mean, it gives us a more creative, and more, it gives us a way of talking about things that we would otherwise not be able to talk about. Like make them into make them into a creature or something, so that you have a way of talking about this intangible thing. Whereas otherwise, we're very limited by what we can say, if we can say anything at all. And then sometimes people just try to talk about it very clinically. It's hard to understand what you mean by that, because the clinical terms are so they can be so limiting, because they're not encompassing like a full experience that you might be able to describe in like the personality of an entity. So I think some of the best stories that we have are things that are these intangible things that we personify. I think those are fascinating. And it's like the things that need to be talked about desperately, and it's so hard to talk about them, and maybe even uncomfortable, but like make it into a thing, and then it's like suddenly we can talk about it, we could give it life in a way. So, and it's the most profound things can't be talked about directly, so they're written in symbolism because they must be. And even if you're reading like esoteric texts and stuff, you're not supposed to be taking it literally. It's representing something that otherwise we would not have been able to talk about. So symbology is very important to like incorporate in talking about mental health, I think.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I never even though I clearly make videos about mental health, like even like just in this moment, like that's I know that's what I'm doing, but even into this moment, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. I am it's I don't know if even coping is the right term to use, but maybe that is a form of like just making it more palpable or tolerable, maybe, or maybe it is just because I have a creative brain that I did that, because I do agree that when it comes to medicine, it's not only very clinical, it's like sanitized, and it's very inhuman, and not on purpose. I don't think it's malicious. I just think it's like, you go to a doctor, or you go to a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and it's like, well, here's what it is, here's the name. It's not like as soon as you find out, like, where again, like, could it possibly be schizophrenia? Am I possibly clinically depressed? Do I have, manic depression? Am I a chronic anxiety? Whatever it is, hypochondriac. Naming it is almost like just the beginning. It's not, it's not the end. So I think if we are those who, the neuronauts, or wherever you want to call us, like if we're constantly spelunking into that place, eventually you do name it, or like almost like give it a shape, or something. Again, you give it like some kind of classification where it's just not I feel bad, I feel mad, I feel it's like it's an actual, because it is, whether you like it or not, it's a part of you. And I think we're just very used to like naming all the good parts, happiness, joy, or like, like you said, the light kind of seems more defined or relatable. And then maybe it's a combination of like people are embarrassed to talk about, like you said, your biggest fear might be losing your mind. Like, yeah, probably a lot of people, probably definitely have the same fear, but we're not talking about it. And I do try not just in these kind of conversations and video, or just people I know who would either get it or relate. But like, you know, I'm definitely the guy at like Thanksgiving dinner, you know, who will, you know,
Yes.
like you know, it's not just like aliens and science fiction
Try
or
and plant the seed with your family, like.
like steer the conversation to another direction, but I will just go like completely like not maybe not abstract, but like just derail things, but not to be, you know, like, you know, not to be
A
a dick.
troll.
Yeah, just like it's like, oh, that like I'll whatever you're talking about, I have other, you know, the information in my head, I can just like relate it. I can just like make that swing. Like, oh, you're talking about tiles. Well, let me tell you about like this thing, like this place made of bones, or you know, whatever. And then that will just lead to like, what do you think happens after we die? Go and like do that kind of thing. People are like, oh, Jesus Christ, like, you know, it's like
Like,
I've
it's
been
like
watching a
get
lot of,
them thinking.
yeah, it's like I'm,
Get people thinking.
yeah, people are talking about like whatever, you know, politics is big now, but it's like I've been watching a lot of near-death experiences. Like, what do you think about that? And like, I want to like, well, I want like those are the things I want to talk about. And you can occasionally get people in because it is interesting to, I think, most people. But I do, and I said this in a past video. I feel like, and I know like this sort of like might seem like I'm separating us from them, but like people like us, when we're doing well and we're calm, we might be interesting or like clever, creative types, but we're not doing well. When I'm having a panic attack, like a visual panic attack, or like when you find yourself being overwhelmed, I feel like people don't know what to do, because not just because like they want to help you and they love you, it's because having one of the herd seem like out of control, like everything is, you know, static, and then all of a sudden you're not static, you're just like a completely different element among the elements. And I think it like on a subconscious, like almost like lizard brain level, freaks people the fuck out. It's almost like that old herd animal mentality of like everything has to be uniform, and all of a sudden this one thing is out of place, and it's like a complete, you know, anomaly. And there's like this like horrible like, we need to get you back in, we'll jam you back in, that you're a square peg, we need to get you in that round hole. And whether we gotta talk you down, give you a pill, shock you, you know, whatever it is. And I do think that's, I feel it sometimes, like even in my own presence of my own family, if I am visibly not okay, even though I, you know, I keep it at my age, I'm fine. I won't like disturb dinner, but like just the fact that they know, they could sense it, whether it's they can see it, they can like sense it, smell it, the vibration in the room is different. I feel like there's almost like an urge to like, we need to like either get you out of here, or you need to like get back in line, that kind of thing. And yeah, that's something I think about often.
I feel like it's not just the status quo, but it's like the status quo of like lightness. And then I don't know if like if there's one person, I think these that people are like, when you're in a panic attack or something like that, it's like you're kind of touching the darkness, and then people who want you to come back and be like this happy person are uncomfortable with that darkness. But if there's somebody there who knows about the darkness, they're not gonna see that and be uncomfortable. They're gonna be like, yeah, like I've been there, you know, what's going on. It's not gonna be something to avoid or fix. It's just like, okay, this is happening now. I understand this place. So I feel like a lot of that is the uncomfortability with not accessing your own darkness, and the status quo is in not doing that, in just like burying it or pushing it away. So that, yeah, that makes it uncomfortable for everyone. It's uncomfortable for you because you're not understood, and it's uncomfortable for them because they don't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. You know, you definitely put it better than I did. But yeah, that's because it's almost like it's a feeling. It's not like I don't have, you know, I know people do it. They go like, why don't you just stop thinking about that? I mean, I don't really get so much of that, which is frustrating. But it's more like I can tell. It's almost like what you said is perfect, where I feel misunderstood. They don't understand what's happening. They feel possibly. So it's like this, the fact that it's not communicated, or it can't be, or I can't communicate it, or they don't have the experience to know what's happening. The disconnect is just like, it's like I said, it's almost like a short circuit of some kind. I compare it to, I had one experience in life. I had an uncle a couple of years ago who died of cancer, and I saw him before, obviously before he passed away. When I saw him, he was like, he had cancer. We all knew he did, but he looked normal. He was going through treatment or whatever. I saw him about a month before he died, and he looked like someone who was on their way out of the world, And of course, you don't go like, "Oh my God, you look terrible." No one would say that, but it was almost like that thing of like, we saw him, and whether you like it or not, your face kind of gives you away, and then he sees that we see him and react that way. So it was like that weird unspoken. His mood changed, his tone changed, because that's what's happening. It's like he sees that we see, and we react silently. We're not. It's not. No one's saying anything, obviously, but that unspoken thing, but it's palpable as a scream in a way. It's like
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So it's like in the same realm, I guess I would say, like that unspoken feeling, the raw vibrations of people interacting with each other, I guess, is what I would say.
I think I have to go.
Okay.
But
It's been
maybe we
2 hours and 45 minutes. Yeah.
Cool. All right. I mean,
Yeah, that's
honestly,
great.
I could go all night, but I right now I have to go. But if we should make closing statements or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
do you guys
What I've been trying to do is do like opening statements, like, "Hey, introduce yourself," blah blah blah. But we start talking, and then by like the third,
Oh, I know.
by the third like minute, I was like, "No, we're in it. Like, fuck that. We're just gonna go." But yeah, so I definitely would like to say like thank you for volunteering, because you actually volunteered to do this. Most people have been asking, and I enjoyed 2 hours and 45 minutes of we went, again, I like these kind of conversations where it just starts here, we go back, there's sort of like callbacks, but at the same time it just kind of goes all over the place. But yeah, I would like to thank you for joining me tonight and talking about mental health and psychedelics and space and time, and I can't label all the things. When I make the YouTube video, I'm not going to put a really great description and kind of be like, you got to watch it and see, because it's a lot.
Yeah. The best things can't be described. It's just like, no, you got to experience it. Like, I could write words, but it's not enough. You got to see it. But also, like, I've been practicing with tangents. Like, when you go off on a tangent, you're like, oh, what was that last thing I was going to say? Like, I'm practicing, like, noting where it branches off. I'm like, oh, just put a node there, and then I'll try and remember and then come back to it. So the more I practice it, because I get upset when I'm like, oh, I had something to say there, and I forgot what we were talking about. And then maybe you'll remember a day later, and maybe you'll never remember again, and it'll bother you the rest of your life. But yeah. I've been practicing doing that, and it's working. I don't know, it's satisfying for me, but I don't like to leave things out. But I think one last thing I wanted to say was, like, in response to you, where you were saying that, like, there's a disconnect in the communication in what you're experiencing, like, so, like, the doctors, like the clinicians, right, they're the scientists, and maybe, like, people who aren't familiar with the experience of it they might only understand the science of it, but science, like, gives you a structure and, like, labels things for what they are, so that you can like understand it that way. But there's another type of understanding where it's like emotional and felt and experiential, and it's like, I feel like either one of these things alone, like they both explain a thing, but together they encompass, like science gives the structure to the sort of abstract thing that you're trying to describe. And then if we combine these two things, we would have a better way of explaining to almost anyone what is actually going on. So I don't know. I feel like mental health should try and do that. Right?
Yeah.
Like not just label things, but like ask people about their phenomenological experience of what they're going through, and then like take these like personal experiences and then match them up with the clinical things, and like that's how these things should be taught and understood. And like also maybe if somebody's going through something and they hear somebody else's personal experience and not just like the clinical definition of it, it might put them, like give them a better understanding and put them more at ease, like this is somebody else's experience. And not just a label, even though labels do help sometimes, just to have a name for something you're going through. But like,
yep. And that's the goal. That really is, at the end of the day, the reason why I decided to have these conversations. You hit the nail right on the head. I want, who is going to sit and watch an hour and a half, 2.5 hours, 3 hours of people talk about mental health, but people with mental health or people who think they might or are curious. So my goal is to have, because I would just do this for myself and talk, but now I got someone else. So now you and I are talking, and I'll say a thing which will trigger you. You'll say a thing which triggers me. And for me, my only goal is that someone watching who has no fucking idea, they are lost. It's 2021. All the information's out there, but people are still getting kind of lost, slipping through the cracks. They either don't know where to look or have no idea what's going on with medical care in this country. It's fucking, they might not be able to get access to it, but they watch two people talk about a myriad of things and they go, aha, or ooh, that sounds exactly like what I think. And then at least if it's not an epiphany, at least it points them in a direction, and that's really why I do, like the reason why I do this is so that my goal's always been like, I want people to relate, not just to be like, for fun, but because like I said, even now with all the information, all the videos on the internet, people still feel alone, or like this is only happening to me, and then it's really not. And the only way you find out is by people talking about it and having the courage to share their own personal fears or experiences, or the dark and the light. Hopefully that one, even if one person watches this, at this point it's almost 3 hours long, and then even right now at the end of the video is like, oh shit, like that makes sense, and now I feel a little bit better and I know where to look and where to start, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I know when I've watched conversations with people, sometimes like I feel like I'm in the conversation if I can identify with what they're saying, So like I hope that happens.
Yeah, me too. All right, I'm gonna let you go. I know you either you're in your car and you're freezing, or you're hungry, or like it's been a while. But thank you again for volunteering to do this with me and talk for all this time. And one more time, just for the video, can you say your last name and then I will say it. I'll say it first. It's Marie Smulczeski.
Perfect.
Woo!
Woo!
And I will text you later with my spelling, because I spelled it 3 times on this piece of paper, but I have a feeling it might still be fucked up. So I will later on just like, by the way, because when I put your name underneath, I don't want to misspell it. I don't want to do that.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me also. It's been a pleasure. I volunteered because I love conversations like this, and I've seen like a little hint of what we could talk about. I'm like, no, I need to talk to him. And we might as well do it on a thing where other people can also watch us talking, because I know it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was great, and I'm going to rewatch it, of course. I always rewatch them before I just throw them out there. But yeah, I mean, I will make notes, at least so there's some kind of description on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like at least something.
Some kind of. Okay.
Well, thanks very much, and I'll talk to you later, and have a good night. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video.
You too. Good night.
Bye.